whatever, she said, I just go to the Hindustan Times. Hindustan Times is a great source for all the stuff that we're not allowed to see here in the United States. You're now in an environment, in an information environment, where you cannot rely on, but we all know that. You can't rely on corporate media, but the rules, the boundaries that are being set up about information are profound, and they're completely distorting our ability to process what's happening around us. Can I give you the example of what actually happened? You said in our example with the blowback in Spotify. This is documented by a report out from the House about COVID and what happened. And that report only carries just through to the early part of the vaccines, and then it stops. For some reason, they didn't really want to go down the road to the vaccines. They did talk a lot about the events around the, let's say, lab leak hypothesis, which is allowed. You're allowed in D.C. now to talk about that.
Finally.
Yeah, it
was about 4 years later you were allowed
to
talk
about
it.
Yeah. So what was documented was that the trail of events was that we had our discussion. That triggered, and this is going to sound bizarre, but this is what's documented. That triggered Coca-Cola Corporation to complain to the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, which is created by the World Economic Forum. It is one of these global aggregators that controls advertising. The Global Alliance for Responsible Media, which, by the way, had a dust-up with Elon Musk and lost, and they closed it down as a nonprofit. It still exists in other ways, but as a structure that could be sued by X, it disappeared when he stood up against it. But Global Alliance for Responsible Media had a socket with Google AdSense, by the way. So they control the advertising ecosystem, which kind of matters to Spotify. So Coca-Cola complains to GARM saying, this guy Rogan, you got to shut him down, okay? You got to put pressure on Spotify. So Spotify gets the message from GARM that we're threatening to pull your advertising, okay? Now, what happens between that and your experience, I don't know. It's not transparent to me what you experienced. We all remember the Laurel Canyon crowd saying they were going to pull their catalogs, which they didn't actually own, right? That was another thing. And then they went after you with this mashup of N-word historic events. There was clearly a concerted effort to take out Joe Rogan, much more than to take out Robert Malone. And so then the question comes, well, why the heck would Coca-Cola be the socket with the Global Alliance for Responsible, one of the biggest advertisers in the world, right? Why would Coca-Cola give a hooey about what Joe Rogan said to Robert Malone on, New Year's Eve? Coca-Cola is really tight with the CDC. Coca-Cola has funded buildings at the CDC. Coca-Cola funds the CDC Foundation for the CDC, as does Bill and Melinda Gates, has done all the major vaccine manufacturers, et cetera, et cetera. The appearance is, I can't verify this, that CDC acted through its ally, Coca-Cola. Why are they allies? What's Coca-Cola got to do with CDC? The angle there is that Coca-Cola wanted the CDC to get WHO to not implement restrictions and messaging about sugar use. Okay? They didn't want those messages. Remember, this is at the heart of the inverted food triangle now. The old food triangle was the product of sugar lobby. I mean, the sugar lobby is incredibly powerful because this stuff is addictive. I mean, it's like having the cocaine lobby, right? That's an interesting analogy because, of course, the history of Coca-Cola.
Right.
So sugar's addictive. The CDC, Coca-Cola didn't want wanted the CDC to influence public health policy to avoid global positions on the risks associated with sugar intake, because it would potentially hurt their market share. They're a major globalized company. So that little ecosystem that I just described illustrates what we're dealing with here, and the many ways that all of this kind of influence and messaging and signaling happens in this kind of integrated, horizontally and vertically, ecosystem that we live in right now.